So here we are in the next step-by-step series, and we are presented with a obesity tree. This is a PICEA, commonly available in garden centres. So this tree hasn't been designed to be used for bonsai material. This is designed to become a tree in a garden, and so that's why it looks a bit bushy. Now, it's very difficult to see what to do immediately with this tree, and so in order to have a better idea of what we can do, what we're going to do is start to work on the tree by removing a lot of these dead branches in here and going through and cleaning some of the internal stuff. And by doing this, I'm going to familiarise myself with the branching structure and get to know the tree a little better before I can start making some big decisions.
Okay.
Okay, so all we're doing really is cutting off all of the dead branches on the inside of the tree and just sort of cleaning it out. This job should only take between 10 and 20 minutes. We don't want to clean absolutely every single branch down and then cut everything off. But really what this job is just to clarify some of the lines and to familiarise yourself with the tree. Okay, so now we've cleaned up the tree, we actually start looking at the fundamental branching structure. And although this is a very straight tree, we have got some beneficial branches in the sense that we don't have two branches coming from one point creating bar branches. So if we look at the positioning of the branches here and here, they're not coming from the same point, okay, nor is this branch here. So we have separation between all of the major three branches here. And there's obviously quite a lot of separation between the lowest one here. Now, if we'd have chosen a piece of material where we had two branches coming from the same point, which is quite common with a lot of species that are grown as garden material, then this would create a bar branch situation, and this section here would swell, creating a reverse taper, okay, which is very undesirable in our bonsai, so we would have had to have removed one of those major branches. But as it stands, we've got branches separated, and so no major branch removal is necessary on that basis. Whether it's necessary from a design perspective, we'll have a look at now. The other interesting point to note is in the apex of the tree, and here we see a fundamental characteristic of spruce. So if we have a look at the apex. Okay, what we have up in the apex is this tree had previously been grown tall, and then had been cut back. And then here we see one, two, and three very strong shoots, each racing up to try and become the new apex. And this is what happens with a lot of trees, particularly PICEA. When you take out the apex of the tree, some of the lowering branches up at the top all race to try and become the apex. And at the moment this one is winning, and so this one is kind of restricting the growth of all of the other branches beneath it. And we can see again this phenomenon occurred here, where this was cut back again, and then both of these branches have tried to race up to become the top. So this is going to be one of our major points of concern, where we've got 1, 2 and 3 branches all coming from the same node. We also have this thin one. Okay, so if we allow all three of those to develop in the future, then we're going to have a very bulbous area here, which is going to create reverse taper, which is undesirable. So this is going to be one of our major design considerations. Okay, so after cleaning and familiarising myself with the tree, I've come up with a possible design. Now one of the problems with this tree is the strength of the trunk, which generally for bonsai, sort of bolt straight upright trunks are generally not as interesting as something with a little bit of movement. Now spruce do tend to grow very straight in nature, but we like to try and introduce a little bit of character to it. And so really the design is effectively based around the relationship between the main trunk and effectively this second trunk. Although this is a branch, it's coming from very low down on the trunk, and so this almost becomes like a second trunk. So we'll be starting this with its own sort of apex, and branch structure as though it was a trunk within itself. In order to really maximise the relationship between the two trunks, we really need to remove anything very, very strong on the right side, and also introduce a little bit of movement towards the left. So we're going to tilt it up only very, very slightly. We don't want to take it too far over and make it into a windstrap like this because of the branching structure that we have. So we just introduce enough movement off the vertical to make the tree a little bit more interesting. And also in the apex where we have the three very strong branches, if we remove the strongest one, which is coming towards the right, then what we'll do is introduce movement up in the top section, and also some taper, so we go from very thick to sort of slightly thinner branch, just introducing some taper into here. What we will need to do though is to create a bit of a deadwood section, a gin up in here, so that we can explain the massive difference in taper, and also add another interesting point. Okay, so we created a few deadwood features, create the sort of gin up in the old apex there, continued that down onto the trunk a little, and then there's two large branches that we cut off, just creating a little bit of a shari down to the few old dead branches that we have in there. And the interesting feature of the shari is the fact that we've made it slightly curved, and so that adds a little bit of movement in the lower trunk, just kind of reducing the strength. Okay, now we have those two big thick branches that were removed there, and I've left those initially the same length. Okay, the reason for this is to show the importance of choosing the correct gin in order to help to give sort of flow and direction. So if we look at the two gins, with this one we have one which has movement, this one we have one which is coming straight out and poking us in the eye. It's attacking us and trying to poke us in the eye. Whereas this one has got some interesting movement. It's going to add a lot more character to the lower trunk. So this gin is then going to be initially shortened to see how that looks, and then possibly removed entirely. Okay, so I'm just going to shorten that. So I'm going to cut halfway through like this, and then snap it off like this. Okay, and by doing that, we've exposed some of the fibres and make it look a little bit more natural than if we just make a flat cut. Okay. So now it's time to sort of deal with the branches, and what we're going to have to do is go through the entire tree and prune out some of the branches. Now, if we look at the way in which spruce grow, if we look at this branch here, we see that from a very strong shoot, at the end we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 shoots, all coming from effectively from one node. Now if we allow that to sort of continue and grow, then we're going to get a swelling here, and we're going to get more branches than we need from one point. So at this stage, because we've removed quite a considerable amount of the tree, what we want to try and do is maximise our photosynthetic potential, and so we're going to leave on more branches than we actually need in the future. But if we leave on the strongest shoot, the shoot that's at the end, and this is going to dominate, and we're going to just get extension and extension, which we don't want. So what we're going to do is going to take out the strongest shoot here. Okay, and we're also going to take out anything which is growing sort of directly downwards, or like we have here, we've got one sort of shading the other, so we've got the stronger one on top and the weaker one below. What we'll do is we'll keep the one on top, which is going to give us some volume to the foliage pad, but we'll remove this one off the bottom. Okay, now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, for this initial styling, I would recommend that you try and leave on this sort of number, on the understanding that in the future, as things bulk out and as we get as shoots such as this, which we want to grow and to develop, once this begins to grow out and cover in this space, then we'll come in within a year, hopefully, and remove this one, and remove this one. And so we get down to 2 or 3 shoots from this tip. Okay, but in order for this to become strong, what we need to do is have photosynthesis occurring in these foliage here, and also to remove the auxin producing strong shoot, which we did first. That way this will have energy and it will also have the incentive to begin to grow. Okay, so what we're going to look to do is to take out the auxin producing tip to the branch, which is here. Okay, and thus we're going to simplify the branching structure down a little bit. Let's just untangle this. Okay, and also take off this dominating influence. So we're going to take off all of that. Okay, and then we'll be able to arrange our foliage pad with a lower level here. Okay, and then some of these branches from the back are going to sit over the top, so it doesn't look quite so bald. Okay, so in order for us to be able to do that, we're going to need to leave both of these branches here initially. Okay, so normally the basic structure of branches should always split into 2, such as here. But in this case, because we want to maintain a lot of foliage at the branch tips, because this is a slightly weaker branch, we're going to keep both of those initially. Okay, this is the main branch that we want. It's kind of sitting over the top there. Okay, but should this one die or should this one not get strong enough, then we can always bring that one up over the top. Okay, but initially we're going to try and keep as many branches on there, on the understanding that it's a short-term measure. Okay, and then those can be arranged into a foliage pad like this. Okay, so some fundamental techniques for wiring is to use both of your hands. In my case, I'm right-handed, so my left hand is very important. It's very important for securing the wire at the base of the branch, and also for bending the branch and moving other branches out of the way as I'm wiring. Okay, that's a good idea to try and position the branch roughly in the direction that you want it to go as you're applying the wire. So I'm going to be pulling down on this very slightly, supporting at the base so nothing breaks. Okay, then with my right hand, I'm just going to wind the wire around. Okay, now I don't want it to be too tight. Spruce don't like to be wired too tightly. Okay, I'm working along with the wire as I go. Moving in between the branches. Okay, spruce, the weaker branches are very delicate, so we don't want to catch them with the wire as we're going around and damage them. Okay. Now I'm going along, and as I'm doing it as well, I'm thinking about the next wire. So wiring these two together, for example, so I'm going to give myself good space in there to get that wire on. Okay. And then continue down with a thick wire along the main line of the branch. Separating the branches as I go, not trapping any of the smaller branches. Okay, and then when we get down to this bottom area where we have foliage on, we want to just make it a little bit looser so we're not trapping anything. Okay, and then we finish off with the wire pointing upwards, like so. Just cut it short, and there's the main wire. Okay, now as we're using quite thin gauge aluminium wire, so if you are not confident using very thick wire, or you don't have it, then in order to bend a branch of this sort of thickness, then we're going to need to double up on the wire. Okay, so we're just going to secure the wire at the base there and then follow along exactly the same path. Now, because we're wiring a conifer, we want to make sure that the wires are together so it looks nice, because we're going to have the wire on for some time. Okay, so I'm making sure that's nice and tight up against the existing wire. Okay, so again, okay, so we're not crossing over the wires. Okay, and then come onto this one nicely. Make sure we don't trap those branches in there. Okay, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to just twist this slightly, just so it becomes flat as I apply my wire. Okay, and then I'm going to finish up in the middle there. Okay. So now we have our main wires on, now we can do some of the secondary branches. Okay, so then we need to plan which ones we're going to do. So we're going to wire those two together. Okay, so we're going to start underneath and up tight against the existing wire. It's going to be our starting position. Okay, make sure we've got enough wire on this side to wire all along that branch. Okay, and then we're going to go once around. This hand here is keeping this nice and secure so it's not moving. Okay, so now we've created our anchor point. Okay, I'm just going to leave that one there for the minute. Okay, and then we'll come back to this branch. Okay, now because this is quite a delicate branch, and we're using quite a thick wire for it, we have to be very, very careful. So we want the wire to go around the branch, not the branch around the wire. Okay. And then we're going to wire these two secondary branches together. And so all we need to do is just go once around here, and that'll be enough. Because at the moment our wire is thicker than the branch it's actually wiring, so you can see here it's just slightly loose. This is deliberate. Okay, and then we can come back to this branch. Okay, now keep it nice and tight at the base. Okay, it's nice and secure now. And now we can be a little bit looser as we come along in here. You see that? Okay. Try and make your wiring action smooth, don't jerk around. Okay. Just finish up there. Okay, and then we can wire some of those other branches as well. Okay, so we're going to give ourselves enough wire to wire this branch, plus a little bit of extra, not too much, we don't want to waste wire. Okay, and then secure it at the base here. Okay, and then we're going to create our anchor point along the slightly thicker branch. Okay, so once again, up tight up against the existing wire. Okay, and then what we'll do is we'll wire down to the tip, to that branch there. Okay. Now, one of the cardinal rules of wiring is to never cross the wire. Okay, but if I go, as things stand here, if I don't cross the wire and go onto that branch there, then there's going to be a big gap. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to go underneath and just cross over there, but make sure that I come up nice and tight in the crotch of that branch. That's the most important thing, that the wire isn't floating away from the branch at the base. Okay, this is going to give it a lot more stability, and we're going to end up with no dead branches because of it. Okay. And then at the tip, I'm just going to make it nice and loose, almost like a cage, rather than having it tight up against the branch, just so we don't damage any of the foliage. So now we're going to position the branches. What we'll start with is positioning the main branch. Now I want this branch to sort of flow in this direction, so I'm going to bend very carefully using my hand as a support. Okay, I'm going to just make the branch flow off in this direction a little. And one of the things with spruce is we want to try and keep the branches fairly straight. We don't want to make them squiggle too much, have too much movement in them, as if it were a juniper. Spruce tend to grow straight, so we're not looking to put exaggerated movement in the branches. Okay, just looking to push it in a direction. Okay, now the other fundamental thing that we need to do is try and create some layers. So what we want to do is spread the bottom layer out quite flat, and then bring some of the branches from the back just over the top of them. Okay, so what I'll do here is just lower this section just after the first set of branches. Okay, and then just raise that up a little bit. Okay, and then just try and fan those branches out. A bit like that, so that everything has its own little space to grow into. Okay, and then maintaining similarity with this line, congruity with this line, what we'll do is just bring this in initially and then spread that out. So then with the second branch here, what we need to do is to maintain a similar line with the main branch. So initially we'll just push it in, close up, and then take it away. Okay, and then spread it out. Okay, so what we're going to do is going to bend it from here, so that then this branch is growing off in this direction, and then this comes to fill in this space, like such. Okay, so now everything has got, it's a much wider branch, everything is fanned out, and everything has its space to grow into. Now, so we've created our base level there, and now we're going to bring this over the top. Okay, so I'm going to bring that just over and down. We want to give ourselves a little bit of space in between there, so we've got air flow through, and so that we have quite a nice voluminous pad. Okay, and then again, the first bend, what we look to do is set this growing off in this direction, and then afterwards we point this in another direction. Okay, and then we split it off there, so those are growing off here, and then this is going to grow off. So everything is pointing in different directions. Okay, and then our absolute back branch in there, we're going to bring over here. Okay. And that can sit here, and then this one can get pushed off in that direction. Okay, so what we have now is 3 levels. So the bottom level, this middle level, and then there's one single branch over the top. So everything is fanning out, and it's sort of a pyramid-like structure, going back like this. And now everything has got space to grow into, so as that bulks up, you're going to have a nice, large, wide foliage pad where once everything was tight and close together. The benefits of doing all the rough styling first is so that you can place a lot of the branches roughly where you want them initially, and that way you can begin to get a much better picture of the final tree. Okay, so what we'll do now is we'll cut those branches off and see how this changes the dynamic of the tree. Okay, so after having removed this changes the dynamic of the tree entirely. So we've positioned this branch down here. Now I've got a tremendous amount of negative space in here, and somehow this side feels a little bit heavier. Okay, so looking at this now, and look for some of the interesting character points and flaws. Okay, one of the best character features of this is the back branch that we featured earlier when we were wiring. Now this branch has come together and fanned out and become very, very strong. Particularly when we look at the branching structure from underneath. It's a very, very attractive looking branch. So really I want to be making a feature of this. Now if we look at this branch that's coming down to the front here, well, this has been shaded by all the branches and stuff above it, and is actually looking very, very weak. The branch above it is very, very strong. Okay, so it would be much better for the overall design of the tree if we remove this branch to enable us to see this, and then allow this branch here to strengthen off, because this is going to become a lot stronger than this branch, and make this a bit more of a feature for us rather than this one. So this one, even though it has been wired, which was a waste of my time, I'm going to remove. Okay, but what I'll do, because it has been wired and there are other branches attached to it, I'll just leave a little bit of a stub with those wires on. Okay, and now we have a tree with a lot more movement to it. Okay, so what I'm doing now is just cleaning the green algae off the trunk. Because of the foliage of the tree, what we need to concentrate on is building it up in some of the weaker areas. So for example here, again we see the apex is still very, very young. This is because we've removed the strongest part and used a weaker branch to become the apex. So we need a lot of development up in here. So this is going to need to be grown, and then those branches wired, pruned as necessary. The same is true for the apex of the second trunk, as it were, here. Okay, here we've taken a branch that was from the inside, brought it over the top, and so we're going to need to develop that. Okay, so those two areas are going to need some attention. The third area that's going to require our attention is this branch over here, which is very, very thin at the moment, and also lacking in a large amount of foliage. So what I would recommend is that this branch here is just grown unchecked for a couple of years in order to build up a little bit of thickness. So if we allow it to do that without pruning, then what we're going to have to be careful of is that the wire doesn't dig in. Okay, not allow the fundamental structure to become destroyed, but allow it to get a little bit more thickness in this branch and build up some vigour in that area.